The Legislature Today is on the air from our flagship affiliate, the voice of the Northern Plains, 550 Cape Fire, and affiliates Talk Radio AM 1100 The Flag Fargo and Talk Radio 1090 The Flag in the Bakken. We're broadcasting live from the historic Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar in downtown Bismarck, the National Cattlemen's Association Beef Innovator of the Year. You're about to find out what's happening in the North Dakota legislative session. Your host of the Legislature Today is Dale Wetzel, managing editor of Great Plains News and the Great Plains Examiner. If you have questions or comments or to watch the show, go to GreatPlainsNews.com. GreatPlainsNews.com. The Legislature Today is brought to you by the North Dakota Association of Oil and Gas Producing Counties, the Credit Union Association of the Dakotas, the University of Mary, the North Dakota Corn, Soybean and Grain Growers Association, and the North Dakota Ethanol Council, the Northwest Landowners Association, Touchstone Energy Cooperative, North Dakota Rural Electric Cooperatives Association, and members Minn Kota Power and Great River Energy, the North Dakota chapter of Concerned Women for America, the Expressway Inn and Suites, where a good night's rest costs less, and the Peacock Alley. It's time to get started. Another hour of the Legislature Today is on the air.
This is Dale Wetzel. This is the Legislature Today radio program. We're coming to you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota. And the bar is full, and there's a lot of buzz in the air. And I'm with my co-host, Mr. Gary Emineth, and the first half hour of our show, we're going to be talking to three lobbyists about what it's like to be a lobbyist in the North Dakota legislature, how they do what they do and who they represent, and what they think of the process. First of all, Mr. Emineth, do you have anything you want to say about anything?
Well, not too much. I think you got really great guests tonight, and I think the idea of having some time with lobbyists, we haven't had many of them on, and so I think it's good for the listeners to understand them a little bit. So other than at Peacock Alley night, it's Martini Tuesday, 2-for-1 martinis, so come on out. It's a little chilly tonight, so you might need to get warmed up and have a extra hot one or maybe a cold one.
That was what I was fishing for.
I know you wanted.
2-for-1 martinis tonight at the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota. They have some good tasting martinis and very colorful looking martinis, and sometimes they're one and the same thing. I'm not a martini person, by the way.
Yeah, me neither.
That's why I was
once a year.
Anyway, this morning the Senate, first of all, the legislature is in its final week. At least that's what we all hope and pray for. There is 80 days in the legislative session. The limit is by the Constitution of North Dakota is 80 days in the legislative session. Right now, tomorrow is day 78. Friday is day 80. We hope that we can be done by day 80. I was speaking to the Lieutenant Governor this afternoon, and he said this session reminds him of the last marathon he ran. Things are slogging along. Those were his words. And he said if you have 80 days, you might as well use them. This morning, the North Dakota Senate defeated a bill that would cut income taxes by $350 million over 2 years. There was a bit of a ruckus about that in the House, as they wondered if the Senate has been taken over by the Democratic Party. The Senate, by the way, both the Senate and the House are 2/3 Republican.
I was thinking about that.
Well, frankly, as is true with many things in the legislature, there's less to this than meets the eye. The House has in the majority leader's drawer, almost literally, a bill, Senate Bill 2156, which cuts income taxes by $250 million. And when the time comes, I suspect that bill will be pulled out and passed. We will have, I think, an income tax cut this session. It just will not be $350 million or $500 million, which is what the House would prefer. The Senate has been, during this session, less willing to cut taxes and more willing to spend money. I think it's fair to say that. We also had the approval of a child care bill, which child care has been a controversial subject in the legislature this year. It raises the eligibility for child care assistance from 50% to 85% of the state median income. It includes $1 million for grants for child care facilities, $300,000 for child care for special needs children. It has some other provisions. What the focus of it is to provide aid to families who need child care rather than to provide aid to the child care centers themselves. it's more acceptable in the House to subsidize the parents of children who are looking for child care rather than the child care businesses. And things are slogging along. I mean, we had a couple of budget bills passed today. One of them is the bill for the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. The contentious part of that has been whether or not to move the Missouri River Correctional Center, which is a minimum security prison south of Bismarck. Should we move it across the river to Mandan and plop it next to the Youth Correctional Center, which is a juvenile facility? There was $12 million in the budget to try to accomplish that purpose, and also a $200,000 for a study. The $12 million has been removed. The study will go forward, and we'll see whether or not that is considered to be a good idea. The Director of Corrections in North Dakota is opposed to moving the Missouri River Correctional Center at all. She says it has plenty of useful life left. The reason that this is being considered is because it sits on some prime real estate in South Bismarck, and there are folks who would like to turn it into a state park, turn the site into a state park, and not have it as a prison anymore. In the meantime, I'd like to turn our attention to our first half hour's guest. We have Courtney Coble, who is the president or executive director of the, I was trying to give you a promotion there, of the North Dakota Medical Association. We have Russ Hansen of the Associated General Contractors of North Dakota, and we have Mr. Joel Gilbertson of the Vogel Law Firm, who represents a number of clients as in his practice as a lobbyist, and he also plays a mean electric piano in certain occasions. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I'm really curious about is how does a lobbyist do his or her job? I mean, I want each of you to answer. First of all, Joel, I want everyone to answer this question. How did you get into this occupation?
Well, I guess I'm an experienced lobbyist and a seasoned lobbyist, which means I'm an old lobbyist. I started a long time ago. 1977 was my first session. And as a lawyer, you're an advocate, and there are ways to be an advocate and places to be an advocate, and one of those branches, of course, is the judicial branch. However, another place is the legislative branch, and one of the first places I worked was at the Supreme Court, and one of my jobs there was to work with the legislative branch, and I very much enjoyed it. Ultimately went and did, at a law firm, did a lot of litigation, but always was doing a little bit of lobbying, and then I just kind of gradually became more and more of a lobbyist, doing it more and more. And I just very much enjoy working with that legislative branch, and as we like to call it, affecting public policy. In the judicial branch and in that system, the legal system, you work on cases one person at a time, essentially, or one case at a time. And when you're working with the legislative branch, you're working with issues and bills that affect thousands of people, sometimes millions of people. So that's one of the exciting parts of working in public policy on the legislative side.
How many clients do you generally represent during a session, and who are some of your clients?
I think my current number is I have 18 legislative lobbying clients. And to go through the list, I won't go through the whole list, but I'll talk about several different areas where I work. First of all, healthcare. On the healthcare side, I represent Sanford Medical Center, as well as the Health Policy Consortium, which is a group of the 4 largest medical facilities in the state, and that includes Altru and Grand Forks and Trinity and Minot, and Sanford in Fargo, and Sanford in Bismarck. And then also I represent pharmaceutical manufacturers, pharma, that gets involved in a lot of those issues. And then I work with some bioscience issues on the bioscience side. There's a lot of exciting things going on right now with some cancer research, so I work with that. I have some insurance clients, the life insurance industry, for example, ACLI, the American Council of Life Insurers. If you go on the ag side, I've got some ag clients, the corn growers, the soybean growers, and the ethanol producers, which is really kind of an ag-related industry. And then there are some ag biotech issues that I do want to work on for ag. And then I've got some national clients that are sort of more specialty. American Express, for example, the automobile manufacturers. It's the Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers, the 12 automobile manufacturers from Germany and Japan and the U.S. I have kind of a favorite of mine, frankly, is the Ann Carlson Center in Jamestown, which does a lot of work with some fragile children, and so I work on some of those issues. Some engineering, I work in telecommunications with AT&T. I represent them. Well, that gives you kind of a.
I'm getting
more than you wanted to know.
You're just a real big shot lobbyist, Joel. Mr. Hansen, first of all, how long have you worked for the Associated General Contractors, and what sort of lobbying jobs did you have before them?
I've been with the AGC of North Dakota since July of 2005, so I'm going on 8 years there. But got into the lobbying business truly by accident. I graduated from college in 1988, and I didn't have a job. And Senator Dwayne Much, former Senator Dwayne Much, one of the more colorful members of our legislator's history, was from my home district, and he brought me down here, and I applied, and I was a page and bill clerk in the 1989 session. And was fascinated with the process immediately, and met an individual named Tom Tupa, who was founding a company called APT Incorporated, association management firm, and Tom hired me. I was with them for 8 years, and then I was with the retail and petroleum marketers for close to 7 years prior to joining the AGC. So this is my 13th legislative session, and it seems like time does fly.
It does. Courtney, for how long have you been executive director of the North Dakota Medical Association?
For about 2 years.
And is this your first session lobbying for them?
No, I started in mid-session in 2011. But this is my first full session.
And what's it like? First of all, what sort of issues this year have you been following?
Oh boy, it's surprising how much healthcare is involved in a lot of these issues. I mean, even in the oil patch funding bills, we're watching the grants for hospitals and nursing homes, but there's been with Medicaid expansion, Medicaid, the new medical school. We've been watching a lot of them.
Who does the Medical Association represent?
We represent North Dakota physicians and medical students. There's about 1,600 physicians in North Dakota. About 1,000 of them are members of ours.
And what did you do before you became the executive director of the North Dakota Medical Association?
I worked for the Board of Law Examiners and was their admissions director. And prior to that, I was in the private practice of law.
You're an attorney.
Yes, and I started lobbying then. Mm-hmm. My love of lobbying in the legislature began in my private practice, and basically that was really the only thing I did like about practicing law. And so when this opportunity came up to represent the Medical Association, I took it.
And who did you represent when you first started lobbying?
I assisted my father, who's a lobbyist presently, and
what's his name?
Jack McDonald, and I'm sure he's listening. And we represented the newspapers, broadcasters, physical therapists, and numerous organizations.
And I want all three of you to answer this question. How do you just talk about what your day is like? Okay, you come to the Capitol. What do you do? I want to start with you, Courtney.
Well, now in the last few weeks, we attend conference committees, which are the committees that we decide come to agreement on disagreements between the two different versions of bills. But a lot of times lobbying is finding out information and giving information. And so a lot of times you spend visiting with other lobbyists and legislators. And
is it, when the session started, what was your job like then? I mean, right now it's following conference committees, but can you just give me an idea of what your job was like at the beginning of the session and how it's progressed?
Well, sure. I mean, when you represent an organization, whether it's one like me or 18 like Joel, you have a certain amount of bills that we follow, and you go to the hearings, and you offer testimony at the hearings, and watch them.
Russ, What do you do? Describe your day to me. How do you work?
Well, I think the most consistent thing about being a lobbyist is no 2 days are even close to the same. But as Courtney had said early in the session, and until we get to this last part of the session, in the morning you spend most of your time at the hearings, either monitoring or testifying, and of course sometimes hearings that are supposed to start at 9 don't start at 9, and you might have two going on at the same time, so you have to learn the art of being at two places at one time, and then in the afternoon the floor session comes on, and you watch the bills that are coming out of committee being acted on the floor, and by mid-afternoon or so, you go back to the
Fox News Radio in New York. Lisa Lucero with our updated 30-30.
When is the best time to get a legislator and be able to talk to them?
To be released, but it's not clear who's going to claim it. That's
our
lead coming up at 30-30.
That depends upon the legislature.
Will be your anchor
the legislator. And I think with being around the legislators a long time, you get to know them, and you know some of them are early morning people, so you show up very early morning. Some of them are not. So I think it depends upon the person and their personality and knowing when the best time to approach them is. And again, no two situations are the same.
Are they approachable?
I think absolutely. In fact, I think both Courtney and Joel will state, there are 845 bills this session. There's no way that the legislators can be informed upon all of them, and many times, whether it's a medical issue or one of the 18 or so clients or that Joel deals with or a construction issue, a legislator will oftentimes come to us and ask us, hey, this bill affects your industry, can you tell us a little bit about it? In my case, construction. So not only are they approachable, they oftentimes approach us to get the information, and we see our roles as educators in many instances.
Joel, how do you typically spend your day?
I think the major difference that I'd mention is, as opposed to the last two that spoke here, is that because I have a number of clients, I spend a lot more time really juggling communication with the various clients to tell them where, first of all, I'll review 850, 1,000 bills, or however many bills are filed, and then pick and choose among the 18 clients to make sure I let them know, send them copies, so they know what bills might be of interest, particularly those that have strong interest. And then, of course, we'll always have a few bills that we're looking for sponsors for. So that'll take a lot of time to work and communicating back and forth with the various clients. Because if you take one client but you just multiply it by a number of different clients, it just takes that much more time. So young associate attorney that I've worked with this session, Levi Andrist, who's been just great for me to work with and help me out, as he said that might have been his biggest surprise, was the time that it takes to deal with those clients. In addition, we have some of those national clients where they're flying in to testify it, so you have to worry about juggling airline schedules and make sure someone can be at the airport to meet them, and or have lunch with so-and-so at the legislature, or set up a dinner, or maybe go meet with somebody at the Attorney General's office or the Governor's office or something like that. So those things all take much more time than you would expect. And actually, the other thing I'd want to note is that the amount of time, or the percentage of time that you spend actually dealing with legislators and talking to legislators about your bill is relatively small. It's much smaller than a smaller percentage than you would think.
Yeah.
Because you have all the other things, the communication things that you would be working on with your employer or your clients, and also you spend a lot of time with legislators talking about a bill or where they should be on a bill. What you're trying to do is to try to get some develop some kind of a relationship with them, so they understand you and they trust you.
How important are organizing social occasions with legislators?
The interesting thing about social occasions is you think of the lobbyist as there being 5 lobbyists and a legislator, and them just surrounding the legislator. And typically what happens in North Dakota is it's just the opposite. There are 5 legislators and 1 lobbyist. So the way that social occasions work in North Dakota is, first of all, compare it to Minnesota. Minnesota, you cannot buy a legislator a cup of coffee. So what has happened is, at least my view of what has happened, is there's very little socialization. And also what has happened is you do not develop many friendships, not only between lobbyists and legislators, but among legislators. And so they have had some very difficult times trying to work out problems. What we have here is we have social events, honestly, pretty much every night during the most part of the session. And the legislators go to those events not only to have fun, but a lot of them would just as soon, frankly, be at home watching TV or relaxing or reading some bills, but out of the sense of obligation to whatever industry is sponsoring that social. But they will see each other very often, and they get to be good friends. And they will also get to be friends with several different lobbyists, of course. But the bottom line of all that, and I should also mention, this does not mean it's just Democrats and just Republicans. They get to be friends across the party lines. So what happens, and I'm, as I indicated, biased, but I feel actually kind of very proud about it. In North Dakota, we get things done. What will happen is across the party lines and across, even more difficult perhaps this session, but across the chambers, is they will get together and they will make sure that something has got to be, we've got to give on both sides, and we have to get the job done.
Yeah, one thing I like to say is that we have two political parties in North Dakota, the House and the Senate. Courtney, how crucial is it to have this sort of social interaction?
Oh, I think that's a very good point that Joel made, is that the social interaction between lobbyists and legislators, I mean, you form relationships. But another thing that we haven't mentioned is the relationship between lobbyists. We all depend on each other. When there's two hearings that we can't make, we depend on another person to help us out. And that's one of the more rewarding things I've found this session, is working with everybody to get something done.
Are they necessarily a lobbyist that is in your field, like the medical field?
Well, probably, although
but not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I was thinking, would Russ, Mr. Concrete, cover for you?
Oh, he sure would. Yeah. I mean, if he was sitting in a hearing and I knew I couldn't be there, I could definitely 100% count on him letting me know what was going on.
What amendment was proposed, what action was taken, did they get anything accomplished? Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing I think that we need to mention is the great safeguard in North Dakota with lobbying and the legislature is, it's not maybe true that everybody knows everybody, but it's not far off. And the safeguard is that legislators, if they know they cannot rely on a lobbyist, or a lobbyist is actually lying to them, and I won't, of course, name names, but could give several examples where that lobbyist is gone and out of business because it's a relatively small group. We see each other pretty much every day, and word gets around quickly among lobbyists, but also among legislators.
I agree.
And that's our safeguard.
So, in other words, if you are dishonest with a legislator or mislead one, then you're kind of what effect does that have?
Your credibility is gone. And one of the first rules we learn is it's okay to say we don't know. We'll get back to you.
Good point.
Yep. We've been speaking to Joel Gilbertson, who is a lobbyist for a number of organizations in his law practice at the Vogel Law Firm here in Bismarck. We've also been speaking to Russ Hansen, the director of the Associated General Contractors of North Dakota, and Courtney Coble, who is the executive director of the North Dakota Medical Association in Bismarck, which represents doctors and medical students. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Coming up next, we're going to be speaking to a couple of state senators, Margaret City, a Republican from Bismarck, and Joe Miller, a Republican from Park River, about what it's like to be the only legislator who votes no on a bill, which both of these folks have done on more than one occasion. We'll be back.